Hello, we're going to be starting in about 5 minutes. We'll stream that. It's currently streaming live now. Unfortunately, there are no chat settings enabled in this Zoom room. And please turn on your closed captioning on your personal computer. It's not available in the meeting, but it will be available on the live stream YouTube. Also, if your video is not on, you will not be streamed live. So please turn your videos on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone here to the first meeting of the Work Group for Social Work Licensure Requirements. I am Carla Abney. I am the chair of this committee, of this work group. I'd like to thank everyone for here today in person or our virtual audience. Thank you for coming. Also like to thank, we have several people in our audience, and I'd like to thank you for coming today. I just want to announce, because we have quite a bit to tackle today, we will not be taking public comment at this meeting, but we will have it at our subsequent meetings. All right, so thank you again. I'd like we start in everyone here in person for introductions, and then we will move to our audience joining us online. And we'll start with Senator Washington.
I'm glad everyone's here, but for the remainder of the meeting, I won't be speaking because I lost my voice, but this was such an important chair, an important set of groups, Chair Abney, that I didn't want to miss, and I wanted to be here in person. So it's good to see all of you today.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Dale Atkinson. I am legal counsel to the Association of Social Work Boards. I'm happy to be here. I've represented ASWB for over 35 years, and I also represent many other ASWB-like organizations in many professions. So thank you for having me.
And good afternoon, folks. I am Kara Sanner. I'm also with ASWB. I'm a program manager. I assist with regulatory affairs for the association and have a depth of knowledge of social work regulation, and really happy to be here and doing this important work.
I'm Molly Arbogast, and I am the acting executive director for the Maryland chapter of the National Association of Social Workers.
All right, thank you. So now for everyone joining us online, if you can just, since I can see everyone, I'll just call someone in and ask you to introduce yourselves, but thank you. We can start with, I see Simone Bramble.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Simone Bramble. I am with Preston Bridge.
And then I see Dr. Judy Posmus.
Hi, I'm Judy Postmus. I'm the Dean of the University of Maryland here in Baltimore.
And then Delegate Robin Lewis.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Senator Washington, hope your voice improves soon. Greetings, everyone. I'm Delegate Robin Lewis. I am pleased to be here with you as the House member joining Senator Washington on this work group. I look forward to learning from you and finding solutions to the challenges that the social work industry is facing in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Ms. Brooks Tyson.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Kara Brooks Tyson from Maryland Board of Social Work Examiners. Hopefully you can hear me. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Breen. Thank you. And then Robin Harvey.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robin Harvey. I am the Executive Director for the Department of Human Services, Office of Licensing and Monitoring.
Thank you. Judy Mounty.
Hello, I'm Judy Mounty. I am in Affordable Billing Association with the desk. And I'm also a licensed social worker as well in a private practice, retired from Gallaudet University.
Thank you and welcome. Felicia Ross.
Hi, I'm Felicia Ross. I'm a licensed master social worker, and I'm with the NAACP.
Thank you. Krista Gilliam.
Good afternoon. I'm Krista Gilliam, and I am the representative for the Baltimore Legacy chapter of the Association of Black Social Workers.
Stephanie Slowly.
Good afternoon. I am Stephanie Slowly. I'm a licensed clinical certified social worker clinical, and I am representing the Maryland Department of Health.
Thank you. Tamika Bailey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tamika Bailey, a licensed social worker representing the Center for Restorative Change.
And then Dr. Anna McFadder.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anna McFadder. I am a licensed social worker. Although I don't practice social work. I've been in education in social work for too many decades to share with you, but I'm happy to be here today.
All right, so anyone that has not been called on, please turn on your video or mic. And I think we have Ms. Adrian Eckes.
Yeah, hi, this is me. I'm on my phone just for another second. I am a licensed clinical social worker and representing a board member from the Maryland Board of Social Work Examiners. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Emmanuel Wilkerson.
My name is Emmanuel Wilkerson. I'm a case worker for the Foster Care Unit and Child Welfare, Baltimore City Department of Human Services. I will be representing the master's level individual who were negatively affected by the exam, halting our careers.
All right, thank you. And again, thank everyone for being here today. For this important task that we have that has been put before us. We are all here together for our love or our concern about social work and what is happening towards the exams and helping those who have been harmed to move forward in endeavor to be social workers. So I want to thank you. We'll first have a discussion in the purpose of the HB 781, which helped form our work group, and we'll have in the mandate, and then we'll have Senator Washington. And then if Senator Washington and I will probably help her with her words if she can't continue.
I'm happy that you are chairing this committee and would hope that you would read my remarks, please. Thank you.
So for Senator Washington, thank you, Ms. Abney, for chairing this work group, and thank you to everyone who's accepted their position. I'm excited to work alongside you to determine how we can best support, educate, and license social workers in Maryland. For the record, I am Senator Mary Washington, and I sponsored the legislation SB 871 that created this work group. As initially drafted, this bill would have put a moratorium on the exam requirement to become a licensed social worker. During the 2-year moratorium, the work group would then determine alternative pathways to licensure. However, as it happens in the legislative process, the bill was amended. The moratorium was removed and the work group was revised to ensure greater diversity and representation. The bill was also amended to extend the Board of Social Worker Examiners through June 30th, 2025, and require the board to notify applicants within 15 days of the completion of their application, whether they have been approved to take the exam within the next 60 days. The main goal of this work group is to determine whether to continue to use examinations developed by the Association of Social Work Boards as a requirement for a bachelor's or master's social worker license, and examine each type of license to determine if the license is necessary and conduct a bias analysis of the qualifications for each type of license. We'll get more into the details of this work group task, but let's first walk through the makeup of this work group. As written in the bill, the following people were selected to be members of this group and were nominated by various entities. Please raise your hand and introduce yourself, which we've done, when your position in the work group is mentioned. Senator who is a member of the Senator who is a member of the Legislative Caucus and nominated by the Senate, President of the Senate. The delegate who is a member of the Legislative Black Caucus and nominated by Speaker of the House. Okay. We also have the Secretary of Health designee. We have the Secretary of Human Services or designee, the Chair of the Maryland Commission on Health Equity, the Executive Director of the Black Social Workers, the BSWE. We have Chair of a BSW of the designee. We have Director of the Governor's Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, or a designee. We have a nomination by the Maryland Association of the Deaf. We also have one representative from the NAACP of Maryland. We have one representative of the ABSW. We have two representatives from the ASWB. We have one representative from the NASW. We have one member of the Greater Washington Society for Clinical Social Work. We have 3 deans of social work. We have 3 social workers from Western, Eastern, and Central Maryland, and 2 individuals harmed by the exam. As required by the law, the governor has designated Carla Abney of the Greater Washington Society of Clinical Social Work as chair. The committee will be staffed by the Maryland Department of Health. To accomplish the goals of the work group, the chair may establish subgroups or contract with any entity with expertise in analyzing assessment bias. The following is the work as outlined in the legislation. The work group must create an outline and timeline for conducting the study. The work group must specifically investigate whether to continue to use examinations developed by the ASWB as requirement for a bachelor social worker license or a master social worker license, whether to establish a temporary license for applicants for a bachelor social worker license or a master social worker license who, except for passing an examination, meet the education and experience requirements for a license to practice bachelor social work or master social work. How supervision may be provided to bachelor social work licensees and master social work licensees at no cost to the licensee. Consider examination testing options, including the development of a state-based competency examination, minimum requirements for a national examination to be approved for state applicants, utilization of ranges of examination scores, and other policies to ensure a bias-free examination. Each type of license by conducting a bias analysis of each, determining if each type of license is necessary, assessing the necessity of examination for each level of licensure, identifying barriers in addition to the examination that presently challenges to licensure in the state, and identifying the circumstance under which unlicensed individuals work in the state and federal government positions as social workers. If the work group determines that the Association of Social Work Boards examination should not be used, or that temporary licenses should be established where the additional experience or education requirements are necessary, then the work group must create a timeline for phasing in any determinations made. The work group must also submit reports to the Senate Finance Committee, the House Health and Government Operations Committee. The preliminary report of the findings and recommendations was due on September 1st, 2023. The state was missed. The interim report is due on or before December 1st, 2023, and the final report due on or before December 1st, 2024. The work group will terminate on June 30th, 2025. Also, you will not receive compensation as a member of the work group, but you are entitled to reimbursement for travel expenses. This is the standard for most, if not all, work groups. I'm happy to answer any questions about the process we went through with the SB 871, but I will turn it back to the chair now to determine the next steps. Okay. Did you want to do? Okay. So what we do need to look at, as was outlined in Senator Washington's words, we do have the timelines, the things we'd like to look at. If you've gotten the agenda for today, we do want to at least start to address the timelines and how we will amend those. We also want to look at the roles and responsibilities, determine any roles and responsibilities, and definitely want to look at ground rules for members. We're all adults, we're most of us social workers, and we know how to work with people, but we may be a group of people with a common cause, but differing opinions. And the biggest thing is we must all, we don't have to agree with someone's opinion, but we must give them the right to their opinion. All right. We must let everyone have their say, have their words, and be civil. All right. That's my biggest thing. Again, for the agenda, the next steps would be to set the agenda for the next meeting. I did want us, and welcome everyone virtually, but if we were able to come together in person just so we can meet each other, see each other. I know we've all been on Zoom for the last 2-3 years, and how we feel about that. So that was one. And we can always meet in person, determine when our next meetings are, how often we will meet. And if we want to meet in person, continue a hybrid model or a hybrid model, all Zoom, but that's for us to discuss. Then look at the frequency and timeframe for future meetings. And then we also want to discuss the creation of any potential subgroups. Definitely looking at, we do want to look at something with our universities, schools of social work, and definitely with our programs. We have a list with programs for our MSW programs and our BSW programs. So we want to look at those because these are very important to us. All right. And we can now take comments or anything from anybody from everything we discussed before.
I don't know if we can come off mute or if we have to raise our hand, Chair. Like, what would you prefer?
I'm sorry. So if you raise your hand so we can recognize you, and forgive me if I don't see you right away,
No.
just so it may be more than one person. So do you have something, Ms. Ross?
Yeah. So one, will we get a copy of the timelines and the dates? I think you mentioned that we did miss one date. So I think I had a question around like, how are we going to address that? And then in addition to that was like my main question of if we were going to get a copy of the work group timelines and everything that we need to meet, or if we already have one, where would we find it?
So everyone should have received the packet with all the basic information that we have today with agenda. It also has a bill, SB 871. We have quite a bit of information for that. We also will be taking minutes, so everyone, member of the group, will get minutes. The minutes we have, and anything that we do and establish in our meetings will go out to all members. And I believe everything we have a very forward-facing and transparent, so that will be available to the public also. But yes, everything we talk and discuss will go to everyone. Anyone else? And these are just preliminaries before we keep going. Okay, so we can move forward. Now we can look at the timelines now. I know, as I said, our first preliminary report was due September 1st. And once we establish that, let's go to the bottom and look at discuss any potential subgroups. That's a big thing so that we can look how we're going to move forward and everything. One of the things I do want to do is look at one subgroup I'd like to form is for our, we have the deans from the universities to get together just to work. You all would have very special thoughts and ideas on the exam. These are where your students are coming from. So I would like to have one of the subgroups be formed with the deans from our MSW programs and working with all our schools of social work together. And I'd like to hear from our two deans, any thoughts on that, or how would we move forward with that? Yes, Dr. Postmus.
Postmus, it's okay. So I want to speak on behalf of Dean McFadder, but I know that we have been working together to have regular meetings with all the deans and directors of the BSW and MSW programs. I think there's a meeting on the books already, but we might need to move it up based on the timeline. But I'm, more than happy, and I know she is as well, to work together and have some conversations, especially if to see, are you hoping that we reach a consensus of what we are all thinking? Is that the charge for the deans and directors?
A consensus or close to a consensus, but definitely, I know we have the document that you sent us is in the packet from the National Association of Deans and Directors of Schools of Social Work in your position plan. So something around that would come back to us definitely with what your thoughts are. Definitely connect the exam and everything, because you are the greatest ones with students that are being affected by this. But thank you so much. Working with you all, if you can, you can't give us a timeline now, but if you can send us something just to say, you said you have been meeting, and probably at the next meeting, give us some kind of timeline when you all can come up with a definite, some information and everything. And Dean McFadden.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Dean Postmus for sort of bringing you up to speed on the fact that we have been meeting, and certainly on some areas of this issue we have some consensus, but I'm not sure we're all on the same page related to what we're working with. And so I guess you're sort of thinking about how we then report that to you.
Yes, and I don't know, we'll all ever be on the same page, but if we can get as close together as possible. So definitely.
I get it. Okay. All right. So when you say consensus, to me, that means you're signing on to a particular position, and I'm not signing on to that.
Right. No, I said the consensus as close as possible. So no,
okay.
Exactly. We have to work together.
All right.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. And so thank you, deans, and let's see, Ms. Mounty, you had your hand raised.
Yes, this is Ms. Mounty. Yes, thank you. Okay. I am retired currently from the university, but I continue to be involved very closely with the social work program there. I think I can provide some comment into this discussion or prepare those comments concerning deaf social workers for the programs that would address the deaf and hard of hearing students. To provide both, and deaf and hearing, I would say as well. I mean, I don't want to exclusively speak to the deaf and hard of hearing students, but the hearing students could have benefit. Whether I could be part of that group and join and participate within those meetings, I think would be critical. That's the reason that I'm here, is to bring voice to this and interest in access to different languages. I would be very interested in joining this group.
All right. I think that works very well. We can get your information. We will be sending out a list with names and everything, but to Dr. Postmus, I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. Dean Phillips and Dean McFadden. But thank you so much for volunteering to work on that subgroup. Thank you very much. All right. So in one subgroup, we're all here to work together. So I'm very interested in what everyone has to say. Any other ideas on developing other subgroups?
If I can use this correctly. There's been a significant amount of work done in the last year from the association from a research perspective, and really looking at the data a little more deeply. And I wonder if it'd be appropriate to do a subgroup specifically focused on sort of research and data analysis with respect to some of the initiatives that are coming out of the initial data publication as a way of coming back to the committee to really inform everyone in terms of the activity that has occurred and making sure that there's a good understanding of the work that's occurring.
May I ask a question?
Just want to make a comment. Just
Senator Washington and then
sorry,
Dr. McFadden.
Just trying.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think, Madam Chair, that if you would consider that might be a good briefing. I think the point here is not to sort of subgroup these issues around data, but to ensure that the entire committee, there's certain things that the entire committee should be aware of. So maybe that is an opportunity for briefings, which is some of what the work group can do, is to get science from different perspectives. So I think if we could transform that into a briefing for the committee, on research and bias, I think that's a way to incorporate that, in my humble opinion.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Dean McFadden?
I was just going to ask for a little bit further clarification about, I lost her name, the person who was talking about the research and the data, and in analyzing different data sets and all of that. What do you have in mind?
Hear me okay? There we go. Well, there's a significant amount of work that the association is undertaking around collecting additional information and funding research with respect to the disparities that we saw in the exam data publication. There are two initiatives that are collecting qualitative information. There will be a republication of the data next year with some independent research and further contextualization of the results. And then also just really looking at what's occurring in the world of professional regulation and other associations and any data they may have released, and some of the broader implications for some of the other professions. So Senator Washington, certainly if there's a forum where we can be briefing the committee, that would be great. I think all of the information should come to the full committee without question. We'll just have to think about how we want to do that, because we certainly don't want to create any fatigue, because there really is a significant amount to discuss.
All right, thank you. And I think we can, I'm sorry, Ms. Slowly.
No, Chair, you might be going in the same vein that I was going to recommend, and that I was going to agree with Senator Washington's recommendation that we would have all of that data be presented globally at the whole work group meeting. And as we're discussing a timeline to mitigate any fatigue that may be experienced by the work group, that we could put certain topics up for discussion and then walk through the different reports that the association may be wanting to bring forth for our consideration as a work group as a whole, would be my humble recommendation.
All right, thank you. And Dean McFadden?
Yep, so my question about the research is, I think that we ought to explore that a bit more, but to have only one group of people engaged in that process with a lot of the different feelings about the organization already. We need to have that, I mean, we're researchers in the university, have other people, looking at that data and how it's done. I know, for example, the ETS has done psychometric examination of the SAT and the ACT and ended with the information that there was significant bias in those tests, which is why a number of universities, probably over 2,000 by now, no longer require that examination. They make it test optional or not at all. And so, research is research and researchers are researchers. And so I just think that if we follow through with having ASWB do the research alone, that would not be in our best interest.
Okay, definitely. So what we're going to do, and as Senator Washington said, we will have a forum for ASW bring their research forward. Well, I think the most important work group right now that we have established is for our schools of social work, because we are looking at changing licensure and helping our students with education. What I'd like to do is pivot for a moment, and for everyone, if we can look and see everyone agree to work on this work group, what are you actually looking to get out or hoping that we can achieve, so that we'll know where everything we're working at. So I want to start with our attendees online, if you could let us know. And I want to start with Ms. Bramble, because you're right at the top, my top left.
And Madam Chair, I'm sorry, you're asking what I'm hoping to get out of the work group?
What are you hoping to achieve by you so graciously agreed to work, be a member of this work group? What are you, you joined us. What would you hope to contribute? What do you want to see us do?
Well, I'm hoping, just from a global perspective, is that, we have a process where, folks who have lived experience can also have their voices be heard as well, in the field of social work, a helping profession. I think we're probably some of the luckiest people in the world, because we get to do a really tough job, but we also get to help people. And there are a lot of people who are doing that really, really well. But there's so many people who I think are excluded from the process due to, again, the very issue that we're talking about today. So if we can come to some sort of resolution around, how we can be as inclusive as possible, implicit bias definitely, is very pervasive, in this process. But we also need to look at, from that perspective, how we can really modify, how that test is, and that's the group's charge, right? Is to figure out, where we go from here. So I'm hoping to, certainly add my voice to that, and definitely learn a lot as well from all of you. But I think mainly that we can be as inclusive as possible to everybody that's out there who want to add to this field of work.
All right, thank you. Delia Lewis. Delegate Ms. Lewis, were you going to just see what your thoughts are? Okay. Move on to Ms. Harvey.
Good afternoon again, everyone. I think similar to Ms. Bramble, I'm looking at hoping that this work group can find a way to make the examination and licensure process more equitable and inclusive without compromising the integrity and the veracity of the profession.
Thank you. Ms. Ross?
Yeah, I have similar sentiments. I think that overall, I would hope for the licensure process to be more inclusive. I do believe that the ASWB, if we could get some insight on what is causing the exam to be so harmful to communities that have been marginalized, And I'm hoping that we are able to kind of rectify that. And if we can't rectify it through the ASWB, then to rectify it through an alternative pathway to licensure. Because ultimately there are people, even on this work group, who are still and have been harmed because of the exams and because they haven't been able to get to work. I'm one of them. Emmanuel is one of them as well. And so I think what I'm hoping to achieve overall is so that the folks who are coming after us into the social work profession, which I believe is an amazing profession, but it's not above critique. And so I'm hoping that we can all take an objective lens to how the social work process works in Maryland so that we can eliminate some of those harms for those who are coming up behind us.
Thank you. And Ms. Bailey?
So similar to what my colleagues have shared, definitely very much invested in identifying a more equitable and inclusive pathway towards licensure, understanding that the exam does not necessarily equal licensure. When we mentioned earlier subgroups that we may be interested in developing or joining, I would like to see a subgroup that specifically identifies some of the alternatives to examination requirements as one of our charges here that we can use for individuals that are pursuing licensure.
Thank you. Let's see, I'm so sorry. Ms. Lilly?
Yes, I also echo that of the colleagues who've spoken ahead. I'm especially interested in indoctrinating some policies that would guard against some of the biases that we see, shore up some of the various pathways that could impede people from not having to be harmed, as we have colleagues on the line who have had this lived experience, and trying to find ways to ensure that this is written into policy, into statute, so that we are not creating something that this work group does the work, but then it's not something that's carried out into perpetuity. I think that that will be a huge loss for us. And I think that that is something that I'm strongly focused on. And I don't also want us to get subgroup fatigued, but it's some way to combine some of the things that Tamika has spoken to, but really from a policy perspective, I would be very interested in working in that arena.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully that means you've volunteered to be head of a subgroup, so we will talk. So thank you. Mr. Wilkinson, I'm glad to see your face. What is your thoughts, my dear?
Yes. I have a lot of thoughts, but I'll try to keep it brief. I am looking for an alternative that breeds complete transparency and complete flexibility. That are two traits that I think are a symbol of our a craft. Only because I recently have taken the exam. I'm not afraid to say that I failed 3 times. I recently passed it on my 4th try, as of 2 months ago. And the traumatization from that is huge, and it's a real weight on my shoulders as a person who is first to go to college, who probably has to financially support his extended family, and just that halting actually studying for the test for 2 years. I kept thinking if there was just some sort of alternative to a test that you can't exactly study for, you fail, they don't really tell you what to do better. And just any step of the way with any sort of research or anything here, I just ask for complete transparency, that if something is exactly being done, that we're all able to actually see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. See, everybody just jumped on me. And who have I called on? I'm sorry. Delegate Lewis, we were trying to from you before.
Thanks. Sorry about that. And I think the question was about expectations.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. So my expectation is to listen to social workers and folks in the profession, learn from them, and then do my best, having listened, to make recommendations about how we move forward. I am a public health a researcher and practitioner by training. I sit on the Health and Government Ops Committee in the House, so I weigh in on policies related to social work, but I am not an expert. One of the most important roles of a legislator is listening, and so that's what I hope to do. The answers and solutions will come from the wisdom, the collective insight, and passion of this group. Before I close, I'll just say that I do have another commitment that I have to jump off this call at 4, but we'll have future meetings. I'll read the meeting summaries, and I'll be with you till the very end until we get the job done. So you may see me clock off at 4, but I'm still with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Eckes?
Yeah, hi. I feel like I have a dual role in the sense that I'm on the board of social work examiners, but I also work in the BSW program at UMBC. So what I would like to do is see how we can all work together, the schools, NASW, and the profession of social work. I would like to keep the profession strong, and also with NASW, and definitely equity and inclusion in our profession is very important to me, but I think there are different avenues to get there, and I would like us to be interested in all 3 kind of sectors working together.
All right, thank you. Dean McFadder? Okay.
I'm very sorry. One of the things that I think would be really instructive in helping to understand what we're all concerned about is if we were able to get the data on a large number of social workers who've been grandparented, both at a beginning and a clinical level, and really look at the trajectory of their practice experience. They are directors of agencies, they're clinicians, but they never took the exam. They were what people use as grandfathering. I use as grandparenting. They were grandfathered into the profession, and they never took an exam. How do we get that data? And I think that we ought to be talking to people about, did it matter much, and how much did it matter in terms of their practice success?
All right, thank you. And we'll look into that. Thank you. And so then Dean, I'm sorry, Postmus. I will get your name. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just think postman with a US at the end. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to have a work group of all the schools and programs that are in social work out there. I know that there are conversations happening across the country and many other states very similar to this here. And I definitely think, like Dean McFadder, I think if we're going to have a work group that's on ASWB, we should have some other folks who are part of that work group who do not work for ASWB. My concern is that there's a financial investment by ASWB that might not be for the rest of us. And that I'm concerned to want to make sure that I'm not saying that they're not presenting accurate data. I'm just saying I want to make sure that the data they're presenting and the information that others have been participating with those conversations as well.
All right, thank you. And we will be definitely looking into that. And thank you, Dean McFadder, for the your thoughts on getting the data that we will find on the social workers who were grandparented in. Thank you. Let's see. And I think if I miss you, please forgive me. We'll do Ms. Gilliam and then Ms. Mounty.
Hi, good afternoon. So expectations, what I hope to provide is my perspective as a 23-year member of the National Association of Black Social Workers and a founding member of the Baltimore Legacy chapter of Black Social Workers, that we are examining the alternative pathways to licensure besides an exam, which was already stated. And then also ways to make whole the people who are still in the pipeline, ready to practice. Many of them are already practicing uncompensated or unfairly compensated. And so how do we work to make those people whole in this process? So that's what I'm interested in, and many of the other topics too, but mostly how do we get people into the workforce when we know that there's a workforce shortage and the only thing that is holding them back is an exam. So what are the alternatives?
All right, thank you. Ms. Mounty?
Okay. What I was wondering, in my past life, I did work for this testing company, not ASWB. I worked for a other company and did some research. From that, is there any possibility to keep ASWB testing, to keep that amongst the group of us, and then look into the test itself? Not just a data point or a data set, but the actual test, to re-examine that test from the perspective of colleagues.
Ms. Mounty.
I was just checking to make sure as the interpreter that
Right.
I correctly captured Ms. Mounty's comments.
Right. Yeah, and I want to make sure that I understand, because I think it's an interesting idea. So the idea is to actually, as part of our study, to include looking at an exam and going through the exam and reading the exam, seeing what is currently being used to assess Maryland, the requirements for Maryland licensure. Is that what I'm understanding that?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Because
I
in
think
the
it's great.
past, I've done that exact work.
Right. Yeah.
And made comments for each one.
And then
so if that is possible to do that kind of identifying, looking at nomenclature and the approach that's currently being used for the state. So we as colleagues can come to a consensus.
Madam Chair, I like that in the sense that that's an analysis of the lay of the land, and you look at where you are now. And I think that would be part of it, is to see the actual assessment tool. I think that's a great idea.
I'd like to add further. Without question, this test really does hold the passage to certification and licensure. The test itself is very English based, very heavily relying on English. And in those areas, we need to be careful with our choice.
All right, thank you. I think we have, if I missed you, I apologize. I think Ms. Brooks Tyson, I don't know if you've had the opportunity. I think you're still muted, Ms. Tyson's.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for including the Board of Social Work in this work group. So for me, I'm here today just to hear from others and to take the information back to the board, so the board can continue to work, not just with this group, but for all the social workers here in Maryland, so we can so we can make a difference. I mean, I think that's what our mission is, to protect the public. But we want to make sure that the social workers who are out there on the front line, that they are able to work with the clients on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
Ms. Bramble had her hand up first, so I'd like to defer to her if possible.
Thank you so much. Ms.
Thank
Bramble?
you. Actually, yes, I just wanted to, from Ms. Bounty's question, which I think is a really, really good idea. Regarding the exam, and I'm not sure if the folks from ASW can answer, how often is the test revised? And when was the last revision?
Can we, if you could hold your question for a moment, I want to hear from everyone, and then they can answer. But definitely we want to get that answered, just so we can go through everyone, if you don't mind. Ms. Ross, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in that response too. So I just wanted to note a couple of things that had come up as concerns that just popped into my head. One is regarding the board. I do want to note that a part of this process is also held up because of the board and the timeliness or lack thereof of responses to applications. So that is something that I wanted to note for the record that I hope that we can explore. I also know that there was some concern around ASWB having legal representation, whereas we as individuals do not. So that's just something that I wanted to note for the record. And in addition to, and back to the board, something that just came to mind, the board has stated before that they protect the public. I do want it to be notated that social workers are also a part of that public, especially when we talk about the social workers that have been harmed by said exams, and we can't get into the workforce that we've been working so hard to get into and to be a part of the community and service that we really want to be a part of. So I hope that that is something that we're also going to take a look at about why that is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's see, we're going to take a quick break, but first, is anyone else online that hasn't had a moment to give their thoughts? Because I can't see everybody at the same time. Okay. Okay, I don't see anyone else. Just as I said, I was appointed by the president of the Greater Washington Society Clinical Social Work. As a Black female social worker who is over the age of 50, I fell into quite a few of those categories when we looked at the results of the ASWB. So I'm very passionate about helping our social workers. It's a workforce issue. It's quite a few issues. Mr. Wilkerson, congratulations, Ms. Ross, and everyone. So I know what it is. It's one of the toughest tests I've ever taken in my life, and I've had to take my nursing board, so I can understand what's happening. So I hope once we get done, we will be able to help all our social workers, no matter who, to get in a profession that unless you love it, you wouldn't be doing it. So I know what it's like. So I want to thank that. We will hear quite briefly because we want to give everybody an opportunity to speak, and then we will take a break from Ms. Scanner, Ms. Scanner, Mr. Atkinson, and Ms. Abergast, if you would like to make a brief statements.
What I would like to get out of this hopefully contribute to, and by the way, thank you for allowing the participation of ASWB. If I may just address the legal representation, while I'm a lawyer representing ASWB, I'm here as a contributor to the work group, and hopefully that can be beneficial to all, and it can be taken in that context. I'm going to borrow from the listen. I feel like I'm a good listener, and I will do a lot of listening. I know that, but I also would like to get out of this is the ability to contribute as to what all the roles are, the roles of all the entities, including government, why licensure, what is a profession, the roles of the criteria that are involved in making licensure decisions, and most specifically the role of an examination, how it's developed and actually validated. So hopefully there's opportunity to contribute that, and perhaps that would be a work group or the ability to participate in some of the other subgroups, or participate in some of the other subgroups as well.
Great, thank you, Ms. Sander.
Well, to echo Dale's comments, thank you for, creating a spot for ASWB to be on this work group. And my expectations are to listen and to be of service if there's information, to bring forward factual and accurate information to really contribute to the conversations and the discussions that will be occurring with the work group, so that we're really thoughtful in the next steps that we take and really mindful of the consequences of any decisions that the work group makes and moves forward. So I'm here to be of service. I have 13 years of experience in social work regulation. I have a wealth of data available to me in terms of understanding regulatory frameworks, and I'm happy to provide additional information where it contributes to the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arbogast.
Hi, I'll echo a lot of my colleagues. One of the things that I hope that comes out of the work group is recommendations and some policy that can be put forth to help remove necessary barriers to the social work profession. As you said, there is a severe workforce shortage, and we have willing and able social workers just waiting to be able to get into the profession. So looking at what we can do to make that happen equitably for all is important. If there is a subgroup on the alternative pathways, I would be happy to be part of that as well. I think being part of NASW and on regular monthly calls with our chapters across the country, I do have a pretty good idea of what the other states are working on and the different options that they're using. So I would be glad to help provide that information.
All right, thank you. It's 4 o'clock. What I'd like us to do is take a 10-minute break. And when we return, I'd like the ASWB to answer Ms. Bramble's question on how often is the test revised. All right, if we just take a 10-minute break. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I have to leave for a flight
Okay.
to CSWE and Judy and I are supposed to be there tomorrow morning. And so I have to get off the call. Thanks again for the opportunity to serve on this committee. And I'm looking forward to some extremely consequential results.
Right.
So long to everybody.
Thank you for both of you all for attending. I don't know if Dr. Postmus, you're leaving, but actually I will see you.
I will be here for the whole, I will be here.
Okay.
I'm actually first thing in the morning, so I'll be here.
Oh, you're leaving in the morning. Okay.
All right.
All right.
And
Okay.
I'll see you tomorrow also, because I'm going to SWE myself. So
okay, we'll see you there.
All right, take care and thank you for attending.
Okay, sure.
All right, so if we take a 10-minute break, and then Ms. Bramble, again, you can pose your question so we can get that answered for you. All right, thank you. See you in 10 minutes.
Got it. So turn my camera off. So
All right, welcome back from our quick break. I know, Ms. Bramble, you had your question. We can have that. You can do your pose your question.
The exam revised. I think that's a pretty straightforward one.
Chime in here as well, but the exam is continuously revised. For each exam that we offer, there are 4 different forms of the exam offered each year. And so the committee is meeting around the year, I think every couple months. Item writers, we have about approximately 100 item writers that are continually submitting questions. And there's a psychometric process where each question is evaluated to determine how well it's performing according to psychometric standards. And any question that's not meeting industry standards, there are sort of standards that are established for how these different metrics need to perform, how the question needs to perform across a number of metrics. And if the question is not performing, then it's removed from the test. So it's a continuous process. Again, there are 4 different exam forms, so different combinations of questions for each exam that are put out every quarter. And Dale, what would you add?
The only thing I'll add to that too is, in addition to what was said about a continuous assessment of exam item performance, is every 5 to 7 years, a new survey instrument is sent to all those in practice, if you will, and data is gathered and modifications are made to content areas as needed based upon the answers to those survey instruments that are sent out. So in addition to the ongoing that Kara just mentioned, there's also a 5 to 7 year survey that is done where content areas can be addressed as well.
I may just add that's one of the initiatives that we're excited to discuss, which is the social work census, which kicks off in March of next year. It's going to be the largest workforce study of social work that's ever been done in the United States. And if it would please the committee, I would offer to have Dr. Stacy Hardy Chandler come and present about exam development to really understand how the exams are developed and how we meet and exceed industry standards for offering the exam. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any follow-ups to the ASWB?
If I could ask some questions or make some comments.
Sure.
So I'm familiar with ASWB's efforts to test exams and look at them beforehand and look at items that they're putting in each exam. But has somebody tested for or analyzed for test bias after the exam has been taken? It is clear from the data that was received by ASWB that across the country, a number of Black individuals especially are not passing. And so the question is, has a study been done to look at the test bias? And second, has a study been done to look at if there's any similarities in questions not being answered correctly by Black social workers?
I'll get this, and then the meeting will be over. I'll have understood how to use this. So your first question was whether or not there are, if anyone's examined, why there are specific questions that aren't performing well. Is that
No,
accurate?
I'm asking if somebody analyzed all the exams to look at where the test, if there is test bias in place. So you all do the work, you do your analysis before the exam is even given. I'm saying after the exam is given, has there been examination and analysis of the test bias that clearly exists? And second, have they examined the specific questions to see if there's common questions that are not being answered correctly by particular groups of people?
Well, this is where just a presentation on the development of the exam may be useful and instructive, but every test goes through a pre-test process and has to meet certain performance metrics.
I know the development. I understand ASB's focus and what they do on the development of the exam, and I applaud those efforts. I'm talking about after exams have been taken. And has there been, because they had talked about, I had heard ASWB was going to be reaching out to or hiring researchers to do an examination of tests that were taken. So has that happened? Is that going to happen? Do we have any results or understanding of after the exams have been given?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm clearly understanding your question, but we did fund a research proposal to evaluate the potential disparities, reasons for the disparities that we're seeing in the performance outcomes. In addition, we are working with an independent researcher to provide some independent research and further contextualization of the data when it's published again next year. So I'm not trying to be obtuse. I'm not sure I'm exactly understanding your question.
When is when you mentioned that you hired some researchers, when will they have their results?
I believe it's a 2-year time frame.
And they started?
The funding was just granted in the last month.
Okay, and we get more on that. Okay, one more, Ms. Bramble.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To Ms. Sanner, I just wanted to see if she could add a little bit more context or definition to her term performance, because you mentioned several times that someone, assesses how a question performs. If you can just break that down a bit for us in terms of what exactly that means. Thank you.
You guys want to take that?
So all items are continuously assessed.
I'm sorry. Are you speaking from a Sen?
I'm happy to kind
I'm
of.
sorry, yeah, that was a question that was.
Yeah, no, it's just that Dale worked a lot with.
Question in response to your.
Do the presentation with
Thank you.
respect to the exam development. So he's a little more familiar with the different psychometric values that are evaluated as part of the sort of the scrutiny that the test undergoes. So there are the different metrics. I'd be hard pressed to discuss that right off the top of my head, but there are performance metrics that are evaluated in terms of diff or so is a question performing differently across specific demographic groups? Is it favoring one demographic group, or is it disadvantaging one demographic group? So that would be diff. But there are several different values, and I would just I'm just not prepared to really give a robust understanding of the psychometric scrutiny that the exam undergoes. And so again, I would just suggest that perhaps having Dr. Hardy Chandler present to the group about exam development, where we can really kind of get into those details, because that specifically is not what I do for the association, or, you know, the knowledge that I bring to this work group. But we could certainly have a very robust discussion after we give a presentation about that.
Okay, and one by Ms. Mounty.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear with everything. But I wanted to applaud what Ms. Postmus, if I'm saying it correctly, I'm sorry, as, you know, that makes sense. And that's exactly what I was asking as well. Also, there's no research or communication in connection with ASB, with my class, with my group, my organization. We don't get a lot of information. You know, what it looks like for deaf people is definitely different. And the reason why is because we have a big enough group to do the work, but we don't have really the finances or the research to put it in. Hold on one second. This is the interpreter, just for clarification. And the reason why is because I'm in connection with, I've been in connection with your organization for over 30 years. And, you know, we've been, you know, it's been an ongoing thing prior to all of this with ASWB. It's been a lot of issues. It's no formal research that's been done that I've seen. But when I was working for doing the test or the exam company, doing that exact kind of research, there have been various things with it comes with licensure, certifications, and that's been a barrier for some people. I've noticed that. And so, you know, some people are picking the wrong answers, and it could be a variety of different things. So I do agree with, you know, Ms. Bramble's thing of what happens afterwards, or I mean, Ms. Portsmouth's thing, I'm sorry, about what happens afterwards. Are the tests being examined afterwards? Are there the same answers given? Is it the same questions and things of that nature? So we do need to look more into that.
All right, thank you. I'll take one more question. Ms. Ross, I know your hand was up first, and then Ms. Slowly. And then we're gonna move forward.
Yeah, I think for me, just a comment that me particularly, I don't think I've already been to an ASWB presentation. I don't know how helpful that would be to understand the development of testing, as this work group is trying to push us forward to really understand what we can do as a result of what's already out there. Understanding how tests are now developed. We've had 40 years to really examine that, and clearly something is not working It is not working for a whole population of people. And so for me, I don't necessarily find the value in having to sit through a presentation about what initiatives are coming through, because my curiosity then goes to why weren't those initiatives being implanted before, when there were several people writing to the ASWB for the last decade and some change about their concerns. So I think to move forward, I think what would be really helpful, since the ASWB does have 2 seats, is to really understand what they're willing to do and what they're willing to share now to help us move over this hump.
All right, thank you. Ms. Slowly?
I think in the vein too, I'm very interested to see what other states are doing in this area. I know that, you know, Virginia is very focused in this area around the pathway forward as a result of the ASWB reporting. And I'm just curious if we're talking, because I'm not clear. I know what the work group is asking, but I guess I'm not clear. Are we as a body trying to determine if the ASWB testing route is what we want to move forward to? Or are we talking about this because of what we already know based upon what Ms. Ross has just noted, the historical understanding of what's occurred, that we are trying to find a different pathway forward outside of going through standardized testing through ASWB. So for an example, perhaps NASW creates a standardized test, and then that is the way we look at licensure. I'm just using that as a overarching example. I want to make sure I'm clear, because I don't want to, I'm very much intently listening to the work group, and I just want to make sure that I know what we are looking to do at the end of all of this good work. And so that's like my overarching question. And then since the SWB is here with 2 seats, I am very curious about, in terms of when you all are constructing when you are getting the complaints or when you are getting the concerns, what level of follow-up or follow-through is occurring in that work? Is it just that it falls in that? Is there a complaint process? Is there a review process? Is there a committee that looks at these things? And I don't want to look at it to like kind of rehash what has occurred, but I think as a best practices, as we're talking about a pathway forward, again, from my policy lens is what I'm talking from, is that we want to indoctrinate what happens if we work with another route. And this can be erected because institutional work is just that. The indoctrinatedness of it can create bias and create those barriers again if we go from one organization to another. But what is the process that they've done so that we can learn and glean from that, and then, you know, sidestep those landmines if we're looking at another avenue, or if we are working with them, how are we going to ensure that that doesn't occur again? Hopefully that makes sense for everybody.
Yes, it does. And I want to thank Ms. Ross and Ms. Slowly. I think you all have both hit the nail on the head. While the ASWB exam is very front and center right now for social workers, we are here because we have to remember it's just not about the test. There's so many things that are going into this. So I do appreciate your comments and everyone's comments. What I do propose, we're almost out of time and it's been a long day. What I'd like, we know we are slightly behind our timeline, but we do have a report due on December 1st. What I'd like and propose to the group, that right now we have so many things going on that we have to look at. I think with work groups, I think our most important work group has been established with the schools of social work. They are a very pertinent part because we all have to come from them. So we do want them to work together to go at their recommendations and looking at things. But I also think so that we can get a better focus and idea that we have basically for the up and through Thanksgiving, okay, but not at Thanksgiving, have a few briefings just so we can learn. And one of the first ones I think may be pertinent for us is, what does it take to become a social worker? Okay, there's so many moving parts with that. Education is a big part, but what happens? We all know we have our foundation year, we have our BSW or we're MSW of our foundation year, we have to do internships, we have to then graduate, we have then we have to try to for licensure. But what happens for MSW and BSWs? Then we have to have supervision and work and everything. So I think if first briefing, we'd have licensure process and the steps to becoming a social worker in Maryland, which I think is very important. Whether it's the role of the board, what do we do about placements for supervision, where we know some jobs will offer you supervision, some people have to pay for supervision. So I'm looking, hopefully that would be a first briefing. The next thing we may look at, which I think we had Dr. McFadden on the data, get a few things on data points on with the social workers that were grandfathered in, did it matter or how did they go with that? And for that, I think we have quite a few topics that we can follow. And then for our first preliminary report, it is basically we're moving forward, trying to get data, getting the information so that we can move forward. And then appoint other subgroups, definitely Ms. Slowly and her subgroup on policy, which will come soon. But I think if that is good with the board, I'm looking at thinking maybe every 2 weeks for the briefings, probably every 2 weeks, which we can do on Zoom. All right, excuse me, just to get the information down. Definitely if we have other thoughts, what else would we like to look at, or do we need briefings on so that we can move forward? Please, we need to know that. So how does that sound with everyone? I'm sorry, Ms. Bailey. And then Ms. Ross.
Yes, Madam Chair. I wanted to also gently suggest that perhaps as members of the committee, we can think about other subgroups that we would like to propose between now and when we come back together so that we can come to consensus or try to identify, narrow down some specific work groups that we can start getting busy on.
No, most definitely, yes. It's always a big part. And Ms. Ross, I think I saw your hand.
Oh, no, Miss Bailey was in the direction I was in, so she said everything I wanted to say.
Okay, no, definitely. As I said, the first one we do is this with the schools of social work, but definitely we're still looking. And then we have policy suggestions for policies, and then definitely for other work groups we have. All right, if that is an agreement with everyone, what we would do is we can adjourn, if nothing else, or if anybody has any other last statements, we could adjourn. We will get out the information for the next meeting and the Zoom links for everybody, so we don't have to come together. And then we can move forward from there. All right. Any last thoughts or questions or anything?
One last question. Will we keep the dates on the Tuesdays just to kind of have an idea so that we have more time to lock it in on our calendars?
All right. If that works for everyone, Tuesdays is fine. Does Tuesdays work for everyone? Okay, then we can stay with Tuesdays. All right, anything else? All right, I want to thank everyone for coming, attending today, whether in person or on Zoom. And thank you for volunteering, or if you were voluntold to be on this committee work group. It's a topic that's so important to all of us. We will get information out. I'm Ms. Abney. If you have anything else, you do have or you can get my email address or anything, but I appreciate everyone. And thank you.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned for today.
Good evening, everyone.